Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming today. This is the first in the series of When Life Throws You a Curveball. And this is going to be my favorite session because these three ladies are my colleagues. I'm very proud to network with and work with them. We'll start first with Ashley DiMaggio. I mentioned this to the ladies when I came in. All three of these ladies have one thing in common. Well, multiple things actually. They're both very educated. They're all very educated. And they all took a career path pivot so that they could be more involved in and more helpful to the people who they serve. So Ashley is an RN with a master's degree, and she helps advocate for people. And her specialty is navigating that absolutely horrific maze of Medicare and Medicare Advantage, particularly when someone's in a rehab center and it's told that they have to get out. Or their appeal needs to happen. She got to the point now that she feels like an investigator and she enjoys it. Jen, I've known the longest of these ladies. Jen is a life coach, but she specializes in helping people when there's transition in their lives. And also she deals very well with families that all have the best interest of their loved one, but can't find the connection to make things happen. And last but not least is Tatiana. Liana, she owns Spirit of Hope, which is a home health care company. A couple of things differentiate hers from other companies. She has a master's in health administration, and she offers both skilled and unskilled nursing so that there's continuity of care should you need it. Should you need wound care, anything like that. And she's going to talk about questions that you need to know when life throws you that curveball. These are three of the kindest, most compassionate people that I know, and wonderful to have in the corner in a bad situation. So,
excuse me, somebody's phone is making a sound and it's really very distracting.
I hear it.
Pretty noise,
Yeah.
but can everybody check their phone and see if
That's
it's
like a doll.
there? Is it music?
Is it from out there?
If we have music come through here?
Is there an ice cream truck out there?
It sounds like a spa music. Yeah.
Ice cream truck?
It's a very soothing ice cream truck.
I don't hear it on the.
Did it stop?
I think it's from like overhead.
I think it stops.
I think it did. Yeah.
So who's going, just Ashley?
We're in order.
Okay, Ashley?
Mary?
Thank you. Alrighty, so, oh, thank you. Awesome. Oh, it's not showing up there. Oh. Okay. Technology. Everybody's favorite. What's that?
Can't count on it, go to jail, you should.
Yeah, right.
Do you have any more comments?
Okay.
Thank you. These are the slides for the second speaker. Okay. We will be saving the slides up on our website, so they'll be accessible to the public.
And I didn't remember to, that's the other copy.
I don't know if it's.
That's presentable,
Yeah.
so you can see the slide ahead.
They have the slides, right? Are those all the slides, or
No,
that's just
those are-
yours? Okay. I'm saying it gets started with that.
I'm sorry.
Ah,
Never heard you.
Oh, that's okay. No worries. I like to hug trees. I'm not a tree killer. All right, thank you. I appreciate that. So as you heard, I am Ashley, a registered nurse. I have my master's in clinical nurse leadership. I founded GuideWell Patient Advocates, which is my own business, October of 2024. I started off in the emergency room at University of Maryland, loved it there, then started home health care, and company got bought out. So I moved into transitional care. Worked in a little bit of long-term care during COVID, which was fun. As an infection preventionist, that really brought out my leadership skills. And I started working for LifeBridge, going into hospitals and rehabs and helping people at home with that transitional period, making sure that the balls didn't drop. And I realized doing that there were so many questions and so many things left unanswered. And you're really dealing with people who have never, a lot of times, never dealt with the healthcare system because they get a new diagnosis or they fall and, well, why did they fall? Maybe now mom has dementia. We kind of thought it, but we didn't really do much about it. Or mom was resistant to it, whatever it may be. But that's where my brainchild came from with my business, because I realized that I can only help a certain amount of people. And there was a lot of other people that needed to be helped. And so a lot of what I do is helping people translate doctor to families or patients and kind of talk people off the ledge. You get this diagnosis and everybody is super worried about what's to come. They don't know what to expect. And having somebody help navigate that and point you in the right directions, I found obviously is extremely valuable. And helps people with that whole situation, making sure that they're knowledgeable and the anxiety is less because you know what to expect. And so, yes, I do a lot of translating and helping people with that navigating. So when you get a diagnosis that is something new like that, it's very overwhelming. There's a lot of, sorry, I'm like trying to read my notes. So a lot of people leave appointments confused. So I'm sure you've all heard the story of, this person went and was told that they have cancer, and then they don't remember anything else the doctor told them after that, because that was detrimental, and you think all these things in your head and you're not listening to anything that the doctor says. So you leave confused, like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing. And the point of what I'm trying to get here is helping you guys with having practical ways of dealing with stuff like this. And so one thing that I always tell people is bring somebody with you to a doctor's appointment. That is very important. Take notes when you're at the doctor's, that you have something to refer back to so you can follow along. Maybe you just listen and the person you bring is taking the notes for you. There also is a way, in your portals to look through and see what the doctors wrote. And everybody hates the portal. I get it. It's frustrating. Maybe you have a daughter or a niece or somebody that can help. I know for myself, after my doctor's appointments, I'm like, wait, I was supposed to get blood work done. I don't remember when. So I can go back and look in the notes and say, oh, look, she wanted me to get blood work done in 3 months after I started this new dose of whatever it may be. And so that's another thing that you can do is go back and look at your notes. And again, bringing somebody to an appointment with you is key. So, information comes very fast. These doctor's appointments, I have so many people who get so overwhelmed because they feel rushed in the doctor's appointments. You get 10, 15 minutes with the doctor. Now, in the beginning, an initial consultation or an intake visit, obviously they may do longer visits than 15 minutes, but a lot of times these follow-ups are 15 minutes and you feel walking out of there like your head is spinning and you don't understand what even just happened, you know. And then you have multiple providers now because you have one, like, for example, my mom was diagnosed with dementia, and so she's got a neurologist and she's got a memory care doctor, and then she's got her primary care doctor. Well, none of them talk to each other. So part of what I do for that is go through their, all of their different portals and communicate with the doctors. For example, my mom was supposed to get a MRI of her brain, and she went and did it. And then because she got it done in advanced radiology, they apparently didn't send the reading to the doctor. And then they ordered another one, and she had another MRI done because nobody told the doctor that it had already been done, even though I messaged the doctor to make sure they got the MRI result. And now when she went back, she had a doctor appointment with somebody else. And so they did not see that. It's a waste of money for some of these people and time, like going to get an MRI, scheduling that and doing all these things takes time. And I can't even imagine how much insurance would have charged. It's probably like $3,000 for this MRI that didn't even need to be done. So really helping people with that communication aspect of making sure all the doctors are on the same page. Your primary care doctor is technically supposed to be the one navigating, the ship and kind of be that pinpoint person. And sometimes your primary care doctor is great and they can do that well. And other times they're just busy and they just don't have time, especially when you go to some of these bigger practices where everything is, they're wanting to see people really quickly because the reimbursement rates are low and they have 15 minutes to see 30 patients or whatever it may be. That communication is very important between all the different specialties. And there is different apps and things that you can use to kind of coordinate all that. One of them is called Caring Village. That's a really good way for the children, your adult children and other family members to kind of put all of these doctor's appointments and everything into one place so you know where to look at it in one thing. Because, University of Maryland has a portal, Hopkins has a portal, whatever it may be, they're all different and they don't talk to each other. Another one is called Primary Record. And that one is really good. You go into these and you put your portal logins for University of Maryland, and then you put your portal login for Hopkins, and then they all talk to each other and put everything in one place. So you have your appointments on one calendar instead of here and there and everywhere. So those are very helpful, those portal connector things. And sometimes you can even connect, if it's all My Charts, you can connect your My Charts together too. And that helps with collaborating and making sure everybody's on the same page. And the families become the care coordinators, and that's something that unfortunately happens because there is nobody else in the medical field to do that. So you kind of become an expert sometimes unwillingly, but that's what happens, is because there's nobody else to do it. So you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So the right doctor obviously makes a huge difference. You want a doctor that explains things clearly. If you have questions, you want them to answer. And sometimes I tell people, sometimes they have like an assistant that may explain things a little bit better that you could always ask them. If it's something to do with logistics, obviously, if it's, talking about your diagnosis, you want to hear that from the doctor. But if it's figuring out where to go for this test and how to follow up with this, so there's a lot of medical assistants or nurses that work under doctors that can help kind of navigate that for you. So that's something to remember. You want to make sure that they're taking the time to answer your questions and not getting frustrated with you when you have a million questions. Because, a lot of this, again, it's life-threatening sometimes and it's scary. And some people get very anxious, and we want to make sure we're addressing that. And including your family in decisions, obviously this is if you want them involved. Some people don't want their family involved. But if, you have that right that if you want your family involved, they have to involve your family. So if grandma falls and, can't get up, like what are we going to do? Is she going to get home care, 24/7, or is she going to stay in a rehab center for longer? Is she going to go to a nursing home, assisted living, all these sort of things? We need to involve family because, grandma can't manage on her own as well as she could before. And then make sure we're providing a clear plan. So one of the other reasons I got into doing what I'm doing is because from stress in life and all these things, I developed multiple autoimmune diseases, and one of them was issues with my thyroid. And I found a doctor. I did not like him. He never looked at me. He would always sit there and type as I'm talking to him. And I tried to make little jokes, and he'd be like, and I was like, oh, jokes. So then I found another doctor who I loved, and she was great. She listened to me. She explained everything very well. But then after I had to get my thyroid taken out, I wanted to be on a specific medication because I wasn't feeling well on, the Synthroid, the generic Synthroid. And she kept saying, well, that's old. That's all hubbub. Like, nobody really believes that. I was like, but everybody I've read and I've done all this research shows that sometimes if you add this other medication on top of it, it'll make you feel better. And then she wasn't testing my whole thyroid panel. She was only testing the TSH level. And I'm thinking, how do you even know if this is working if you're not looking at the whole picture? And she was very nice about it. And I tried to advocate for myself. And then after a while, I said, you know what? I'm not doing this anymore. I'm just going to find a doctor that I know will prescribe what I want. So I started calling around to all the other doctors, endocrinologists, and finding out who prescribed the medicine that I'm taking now. It's an active form of thyroid instead of an inactive form, and it works better. And so I found a new doctor, went in. He was okay, not like the most friendliest person in the world, but he listened to me. He took everything into consideration, and he put me on that medicine. I tell you, the next day I felt like I was walking on air. I was like, wow, I feel so much lighter. Like I have this energy back that I didn't have before. So, it's really important to make sure that you feel comfortable with your doctor and that they listen to you. And the red flags, that you don't want to feel dismissed or rushed. And that's kind of how I felt when I would meet with her. She was basically saying, well, I don't believe in that. And I go to conferences and that's not what we talk about or whatever it may be. And I'm thinking, well, I don't feel good. You don't seem to care. So I'm going to find somebody else. So, you can leave when you're unsure, or you don't want to leave the room when you don't know what's happening next. Like that's another thing too, is did they explain everything to you? Do you know what to expect down the road, what's coming next? You can go to the next slide. So another thing I advocate for a bunch is with people making sure they're prepared for appointments. Have your questions written down. You can do this in all ways. You can write it down on a piece of paper. I always suggest having an actual notebook to keep everything in one place, or a little journal that you keep in your bag. My mom used to love Post-it notes, and I worked with a woman. Oh my God. I was like, did you paint the wall in Post-it notes? How do you even keep track of this? It was like Post-it notes everywhere. And then you lose them and you can't find them. And I have my folder, my binder books that I have that I can go back 2 years from today, like back 2 years ago, and look at and be like, oh yes, I remember I talked to this person, because I just jot things down or I ask questions. My to-do list, I keep in all one binder. But I feel like that's very important, trying to keep everything in one place so you don't lose the million pieces of paper. You can also do it online or on your phone. They have, note sections on your phone that you can use. I know when my mom was first diagnosed with her dementia, we had a shared note, a Google note, and my brother would write a note, I would write a note, my sister wrote notes, and that way we had everything all in one place. That's another option too. So making sure that you come to appointments prepared with questions and knowing treatment options. Some doctors may jump straight to oh, we're going to do chemo and radiation. Well, I don't know if I want to do that. Can we try this or that? You know, for example, I also developed, like I said, multiple autoimmune diseases. One of them was colitis, and they wanted me to go on infusions. And I was like, I don't want to do infusions because if you start infusions, you don't stop infusions. And that's not what I want to be doing once a month for half of my day. And obviously, you know, your veins get shot, all these other things happen because of it. And so I found a registered dietitian who specializes in inflammatory bowel, and I worked with her for 4 months, and all my symptoms went away, and I have not been on any medication for the last year and a half, and everything is perfectly fine. So sometimes even if your doctor may not believe it, you can also go and research this stuff. And when I told her that this is what I did, because she was like, I don't know if that's going to work. And I'm like, well, I'm going to try it because whatever this you're doing is not working either. So I did. And she was like, oh, that's good to know. You know, there are specific dietitians that specialize in all different stuff, and they are great. A lot of times you can get them covered by insurance. Even Medicare will cover them. You know, if you have diabetes or something like that, or heart failure, they have dietitians who specialize in that. And it's great because you can learn a lot from them, and obviously they can get you out of a rut if you need that. So that's something to think about. You know, I hear people going to one of the places I did a presentation at was Hopewell Cancer Center and some other cancer centers where they do mistletoe therapy. And that's another big one that's obviously not involving chemo and radiation, but it's something that you got to look at and go see all your options. And so, you know, what are the risks and benefits of what you're doing? Obviously, like I was saying, you know, with the stuff with my infusions, you know, what are the risks and benefits? Again, you're going to be a hard stick if you keep blowing all your veins. If you get radiation, you may get radiation burn. You know, chemo, your hair is going to fall out. All these different things, you really need to know what can happen in the long run or even right after it happens. And, you know, risk outweigh the benefits. That kind of answers that question too. And what's next? That's another thing I always tell people when you leave doctor's appointments. Summarize before you're getting ready to walk out the door. So you want me to go get this x-ray and this blood work done, and then you're going to call me? Or am I calling you? Or what's happening? You know, no news is good news. You know, for example, my dad went and got a stress test done, and they told him they would call him. And he said, well, don't use the portal. I don't like the portal. And what did they do? They put the message in the portal. And and so when I said something, I wrote back and I said, well, I told my dad, but you told him that you were going to call him. And he's all bent out of shape because you didn't call him. And she was like, oh, I don't know why I said that. So, you know, all these things that you have to think of. And then, I don't know if it's starting to get dark. There we go. Yeah, and then watching for things to watch for at home. This obvious sometimes, like if you're starting chemo, am I going to have nausea? Do I need to have medication for that? And a lot of times the doctors and the cancer centers and whatnot are very good at kind of predicting that and helping you get to that point. But you know, it's important to make sure you know what to expect at home when you get home, because you feel kind of like you're on a lost, lonely island when you get home sometimes after a hospitalization or something like that. You can go to the next one. And it's okay to get another opinion. Again, like I said, my doctor, I don't think I really hurt her feelings. And if I did, oh, well, she's still getting paid by somebody else. You know, it's okay to go somewhere else and get a second opinion. Insurances actually will cover it. Medicare will cover it if it's something like, you know, a serious diagnosis. If you're talking about you got diagnosed with breast cancer and now you have to have a full deep flap procedure where they take both your breasts off and move your tummy up to your breast and all these things, you know, that's serious. And you really want to make sure that you are getting all of your options in front of you and getting a second opinion, because that can also make you feel less worried that, did I make the right choice? If I had 2 doctors telling me this is the only thing that really can be done, that'll solidify you making that choice as well. And then, you know, they may have different options. Like I was saying, some of the doctors may work a more natural path of the mistletoe therapy for cancer or whatever it may be. And that if that's what you want to do, then definitely go with that doctor. And again, it helps confirm that plan because you have heard it from multiple people that this is probably your only option. So, going to a second doctor or another opinion is also very important. And keeping track of your care, as we get older with all these different doctor's appointments and everybody saying different things, you really have to be organized. I try to tell people to have one point person in the family, and then they can kind of, if Bobby is really good at going to appointments with mom, maybe send Bobby, and then Shirley can be the one who organizes everything on the calendar because that's her, that's her best, thing that she can do great. So making sure that you're keeping a medication list and again, a binder to keep all of this in one place. And again, those online, My Primary Record and the Caring Village, you can keep all of this stuff in one place and it will pull in your medication list from your doctor. So you don't even have to enter anything. So that medication list, it keeps it up to date. You want to make sure you have one in the home, especially if you have a caregiver or a home care agency. So they depending on what, they can't administer the medication, depending on if they're an RN or whatever it may be. But you have that there, so you can refer to it and taking it to your doctor's appointments and all that. And then, appointments that I feel my parents have one of those giant desk calendars that they have in their family room. And it's great for them. But then when they ask me to go to appointments and they change the date and don't tell me, that doesn't work. Keep that in mind. If you want your children to come to appointments with you, make sure you update them on when the appointment was changed to. And discharge instructions, a lot of times you get those papers of discharge instructions that tell you to quit smoking or whatever it may be. It's all very generic, but there's usually like some sort of paragraph in there that tells you more specifically your reason. Make sure that you keep those, or you can get them on your portals as well. You can also pull those off of there. And then questions for the next visit. That, again, these journals, I keep referring to binders and that sort of thing. Keeping all of that in one place is a great thing to do. And so what matters most? This is kind of a wrap up of everything we talked about. And it's, make sure we're asking the right questions. And, there's no stupid question, just keep asking questions and doing a lot of research on your topic too. Or if you have a daughter who's a nurse or a niece or something like that, involving them in the process, and advocating for yourself and your loved one. There's different ways to advocate. And my last name is DiMaggio, as you know. I was adopted, but so I don't look Italian. And when I got married, I kept my last name because it was cool. So anyway, he's a grumpy Italian man. And so when my mom was in rehab, he was calling me, oh my God, I got to call the police on these people. I'm like, Dad, this is not how you advocate. There's a way to do this. It's like, I called the nurse and I told her I'm calling 911. I was like, oh, you're so embarrassing. And I know you care for mom and that's all you want, but maybe there's a better way of doing it. Like, okay, call the nurse and say, I know you're really busy. My wife really, she's been ringing the call bell and nobody's coming. I don't want her to fall. Can somebody please go in the room? That sort of thing. Advocating for yourself the correct way is key, obviously. You'll get much farther in life. I tell my kids that all the time. Even people who are not so smart get very far in life if they're nice. It's very true. And getting the second opinion when needed, and staying organized is a big one. And then building that support team is a big one too. Again, family members. There's a lot of community groups as well. And I know that we were talking before about one of the next in 2 months, I think you had said, the nonprofits are coming in. There's all different associations. There's support groups that you can go to. There's online Facebook groups, and I learn a lot from there. Obviously, I don't listen to everything. I always go do my own research. But, I joined one for thyroid stuff because I was like, I don't know. There's not a group for thyroid people in my area. But if I join this group on Facebook, there's tons of thousands of people who are all in the same boat as I am, and they may have other ideas that I didn't even know about. And I do a Parkinson's support group, and we have educational speakers that come in there. And it's nice to have that other person who's dealing with the same thing that you are to bounce ideas off of. They may be a little bit further in their diagnosis than you. They could give you a reference for a really good doctor, or, the tools like utensils that you can use if you have Parkinson's that people may not even know exist. If you come to these meetings and these support groups, you'll find a lot of support. And then, out in the community too, like, nonprofits who help with transportation services or meal preps, that sort of thing. Those are all great to have in your back pocket as well, because we could all use as much support as we can get. I think that might be it. Yes. Any questions from anybody? Or are we waiting?
We can have the Q&A.
Okay, sure.
Well, that was a lot of good information, and it perfectly segues into my territory. A little bit about me. So I am the owner of Spirit of Hope Home Care, and a lot of what she was talking about actually really resonates. I have a master's in healthcare administration, as Marian mentioned, and so I was managing 3 hospital departments, and so all of those departments were very critical. So we had colorectal surgery and breast surgery were the 2 biggest ones. And oftentimes you would get that big diagnosis, and the physicians, they're great because they focus on you, right? And they'll give you the information, but you don't hear anything past that really. So again, everything you said was really spot on. And so what I really want to talk to you guys about today is what happens after that diagnosis, really in the steps that you need to take to make sure that you are preparing yourself and your family to live a life that's not just about the diagnosis, but still kind of thriving despite the diagnosis. Excuse me. So a little bit about our home care agency. We do serve Anne Arundel, Howard County, and we do help with bathing, dressing, companionship services. We do have that skilled service component of things. So if you do need help with medication management, wound care, medication administration, that's something that we could support with. We do have an RN that's on call 24/7 to help answer any questions in case of emergencies, which our clients really like and enjoy. Sometimes we get calls that are not so urgent, like someone's sorry, we just got a call last night, and it really wasn't an emergency. She was just worried about her ankles, and nothing big, but it's okay. We're there to provide support, and we'll take all the calls that come in. I really started this agency because I wanted to provide support and be all-encompassing. When my grandmother was diagnosed with her terminal illness, I was actually outside of Maryland. And so I was having to do a lot of coordination from another state. And my mother, who was here with her brother, they were Iraq, right? Like they didn't know what they were doing, and they didn't have any resources. And so it really fell upon me to gather all of the information, to do a lot of Googling, right? Best near me, best, like all of that, fill in the blank. And so when I started the agency, I wanted to be all encompassing, right? Partner with individuals and other businesses who could really help support our clients at every phase. So let's say you're getting that diagnosis and you have, you have dementia, regardless of what stage of dementia you have, right? You may need some grab bars installed, right? I wanted to be able to partner with individuals who could really, I could refer you and say, hey, call Marian, right? Or you may not need home care, right? Because not everybody needs home care. You may want to live in a memory care unit or assisted living. And I can say, hey, I know somebody else for that, right? So again, I want it to be all encompassing for our clients. And so that's really the heart and the passion behind how I founded the agency. So it's really important to really understand the journey when you get a difficult diagnosis. It is not just physical, it's emotional as well. And the changes are practical. And I know it's crazy to say because you're getting this information and I'm telling you, you have to be practical about it, right? It's kind of like, well, Tatiana, that doesn't make any sense, but just follow me. It is very important to have a support system. It's important to understand that you cannot go through that journey alone. And it's okay not to be okay to admit that. It's okay to seek comfort and help from your closest family members if you want them involved. And then we'll also discuss about later on and how home care can really improve your quality of life and give you that, help empower you as you're dealing with that diagnosis. So let's talk about navigating the clinical path. There are essential questions that I want you guys to think about when you're communicating with your providers. And is really going to set you up on a path to succeed, right? Questions like, what is the expected progression of this disease, regardless of what it is, whether it's congestive heart failure, what is dementia, or diabetes, whatever it is, you have to understand what the progression of that disease is so that you can properly plan. What are the primary clinical markers that I should be monitoring? How do I know that I'm on the right path? How do I know that, my blood pressure is okay? How do I know that my blood sugar levels are okay? So you have to really understand what normal means for you, and normal may be something different for the next person, right? I particularly have a low blood pressure all the time. So my level may be different from your level, but it's really important to understand what your baseline is. Excuse me. Understanding the treatment and the side effects of those treatments. Again, that's very important in order to make sure that you are well prepared so that when you do have those down days, you have things in place to help you navigate through that. Asking questions like, at what point does curative care transition to palliative support? And that's really important. I know that's a difficult conversation to have, but not everything has a cure, right? And so really understanding what your diagnosis means. Is it curable? If yes, fantastic. If not, that's okay, right? Like something like dementia, for example, there is no yet known cure. However, the trajectory of it could last many, many years, right? Like you can have an individual who's diagnosed with dementia, depending on what stage, and they live with it for like 15 years, right? And there's not a problem, like they're still here. And then other people, it just progresses a lot quicker. So again, understanding what your trajectory is, and if you need palliative support, what that looks like, and who you need to bring on board to provide that for you guys. I wanted to talk about some, indicators of when you would need home care support. I know a lot of times people are kind of confused, like, is it the right time? Is it not? Am I okay? Am I not? So if you are noticing, medication is a huge thing, right? Oftentimes, whether or not you have a difficult diagnosis, even for me, I forget to take my daily vitamins. So medication is just one of those things. It's easy to forget, right? And so if you're finding that you're having a hard time keeping track of your medication, that's probably an indicator that you may need some additional support, because that is an important thing. You don't want to miss your medication. Are you having a hard time with your activities of daily living, things like bathing, dressing, toileting, things like that? If you're having a difficult time completing one or more of those tasks, that's probably a sign that you should seek additional support. And again, your family member, although they're your support system, there is an immense amount of pressure and physical toll and emotional toll that falls upon them when they're caring for their loved one who's ill. And so it's really important to recognize that. They may not say it, but believe you me, I meet a lot of families and they feel it. And sometimes they even feel guilty about allowing a caregiver to step in because they may feel like, oh, well, that means I'm giving up on my family member or I'm abandoning them. So it's really important to recognize the physical and emotional toll that your family members are kind of experiencing. And it may just be a conversation and saying, hey, I noticed that, you're not getting enough sleep. How about we bring in a caregiver for respite care, maybe 4 hours or 3 hours so you can get a little bit of rest and then come back. So those are important conversations because in order for them to support you, they also have to be okay. My mother always says you can't pour from an empty cup. And so I've always tried to challenge that saying, but mother knows best. And then lastly, nutrition. So we want to make sure that you are keeping track of your nutrition, whatever diet you are on, the provider has put you on, making sure that you are keeping track of that. You are able to prepare meals. If you're not able to prepare your meals, that's probably a sign to bringing additional support to assist you with that. And then I know they have a lot of, Instacart things and prepared meals on wheels. I think that's what it is. But again, some people may just benefit from the no, it's okay. Some people may just want a caregiver to actually prepare the meals, right? And say, hey, here are the groceries from Instacart. Can you make me, a turkey sandwich or scrambled eggs, whatever the case may be, right? But just having that person that you can reach out to and have your needs met, I think it's really important. So a common misconception about home care is that loss of independence, right? Many of us are used to doing things the way we want them to be done, right? So in my home, for example, my husband and I were polar opposites. Like, I'm done with the toothpaste, I have to close it back up and put it in its place. When he's done with it, it's everywhere. So, so again, everybody has their thing, right? How you live your life, your daily routine. And sometimes bringing in a stranger could be a little bit frustrating because you think, well, I know how I like things done, and I don't know that you're going to do it that way, right? Or I don't know about having a complete stranger in my home. And those are complete valid feelings to have, right? And so what I want you guys to understand is a caregiver is not there to replace your family member. They're not there to, take things away from you. It's really just a support system. We're there to empower you. And as a matter of fact, we give you back that independence, right? We help you to thrive. We help you to live a fuller life despite the diagnosis, despite the physical or health limitations that you may have, right? So it's really just an extension and not a replacement. I know sometimes family members will mention that, I don't want the caregiver to think that, the family is no longer involved. Believe you me, we want you involved, right? So we are just an extension of your family. You can go to the next slide. I paraphrase. So how can Spirit of Hope Home Care or any other agency benefit an individual who's just been diagnosed with a difficult ailment? So by having an individual come into your home, you ensure that care is provided in a familiar setting, right? This is your home. You like things the way you like it, and we just come in. We don't change anything. We collaborate. We promote, again, like I mentioned, independence and dignity. All of our caregivers are very respectful. They're well-trained. We have an RN who kind of manages the clinical side of things. And so they create a care plan for the caregivers to be able to ensure that you are kept safe, clinically speaking. We also provide emotional support and companionship. And that's important. Especially, again, if you're dealing with something like memory care, Parkinson's, dementia, all of that, it's really important to have that social interaction and that engagement. So having a caregiver really helps to promote that. As I mentioned earlier, that 24/7 RN availability is really good. Flexibility in scheduling. Your loved ones, they have jobs, right? And so they have limitations on when they're available to be able to take you to doctor's appointments or whatever it is that you want to do. But a caregiver, again, we can schedule them around your needs and your family's needs to make sure that you're making it to the senior center or partaking in whatever activities you want to partake in and not just sitting at home, right? And again, one of the biggest things that I mentioned earlier is just having access to our network. I'm very proud of the network that we have created within our agency to be able to support our clients with whatever needs they have. So, okay, this is a big one for me. Unfortunately, one of the hardest things that I come across is lack of planning when it comes to, dynamics between family members. And what I mean by that is family members have a hard time outlining amongst their children, right? Who is in charge of what? Whether it be financially, medically, whatever it is, right? And so, again, it's really important to those who fail to plan to fail, right? I think you said that, maybe. But it's really important to plan, because if you don't plan, then your kids are fighting, your family members are fighting, and then there's chaos. And then you bring in a home caregiver, and we can't solve family dynamics, right? Like there's only so much I can do. I can only advise. I could probably point you to a family lawyer, or I could, there's only so much we can do. But things are a lot easier and run a lot smoother once you've addressed some of these things. Do you have an advance directive? Is it updated? Do your loved ones know where it is? That's important too. If you have it and no one knows where it is or what it says, I mean, it's no good, right? Medical power of attorney. Do you have that? Is it current? You may have designated, your son before, and now you realize maybe that was a mistake. Is it updated, right? Really quick story. My brother and I were super close. We're like twins. I'm older than him. He thinks he is older than me. But my mother has expressed that she wanted to be an organ donor. She's expressed that to me several times. Well, her and I communicate every day, like 3 times a day. She barely talks to him. He's in California. He's in the Navy. And so in the past, she had not expressed to him that she wanted to be an organ donor. Now she's expressed it to me. So I had a casual conversation with him and I said, hey, do you know that my mom wants to be an organ donor? He said, no, she doesn't. I said, well, yes, she does. Well, she's never told me that. Well, maybe she should. That's a good point, right? And so imagine my mother had passed away. Then he and I would be having this fight and this battle about, well, she told me, no, she didn't. She told you, she didn't. It's a lot of chaos, right? And so I told my mother, I said, I'm glad you told me, but don't tell me. Tell the legal people. Put it on your driver's license. Put it in your will so that I don't have to fight, my brother who looks like a linebacker over your organs, right? Again, plan appropriately because it's a sign of love for your family members. Making sure that you have the appropriate HIPAA forms already filled out at the hospitals. That's important. If you want to, do not resuscitate. If you want, any type of intervention that you want, please make sure that those things are clear so that, because we have clients that their family members have told us, if something happens, please do not call 911. Call us first. She doesn't want to go back in the hospital. And so we need to know that as your caregivers, because we don't want to call 911 and her wishes were to not go back in the hospital. So if we don't know it, we can't honor your wishes. And the best time to let your wishes be known is when you are of sound mind and you're able to vocalize it. So implementation roadmap, because I like homework. You get the diagnosis. Immediately, you want to organize all your clinical records, schedule up follow-up appointments, and diagnosis meetings. Like we talked about earlier, who are all your care providers? Who's all involved? Who do you need to meet and when? Making sure that you conduct a home safety assessment, right? Interview home care providers. Do not wait until the very last minute when things are falling apart to interview a home care provider, because by that point it's too late. You're stressed. You're not making the best decision when you're stressed. Long-term, monthly review the care plan to adjust any clinical changes or improvement. So if whatever plan you guys have created with your family, with your provider, is it still accurate months later? If it needs to be changed, if it needs to be updated, please make sure you do that. Within our agency, our RN visits our clients every, I think, 90 or 180 days, just to make sure that nothing has changed. Because at the time of the initial assessment, the patient may not be a fall risk, but guess what? 30 days later, they're a fall risk. And true story, we did an assessment a few months ago for a client, a potential client, and he had not had a fall. He was dementia. He had not had a fall. The registered nurse made a note and said he should really be getting more care. And before we initiated service, he fell 3 times, ended up in the hospital, never made it out of rehab. He's passed away. So again, you have to also listen to the care professionals, because the wife thought she could handle it. She thought, you know what? I'm with him at night. I can handle it. Well, guess what? You're human. You also need sleep. You cannot monitor him 24/7. And when he gets up in the middle of the night, he's going to fall and then end up in the hospital. So a lot of these things could be preventable if we just, again, mitigate our risk. Okay. Let's see. I've talked about this before, so we can skip this slide. Yeah, go to the next one. So I want to talk about the digital legacy and giving your family access. So oftentimes we focus about the medical stuff, like the HIPAA forms, the advanced directives, but we also want to talk about the digital access, things like online banking. Who has access to that? Your passwords. Do you have someone who can pay your bills? If your bills are auto payment, who has access to that information? And can you please communicate with them, hey, I need you to take over paying my bills monthly. If you have, again, any wills, copies of it, making sure that you communicate with someone where it is. If you have long-term care insurance, if you have that policy, a lot of people have it and their parents have it, but they don't know that their parents have it. And that's a waste, right? Because that's benefits that you're not taking advantage of. So please let your family members know about all of that. Safety deposit boxes, keys, extra spare keys, making sure that you communicate where those are. And those are also good for the caregivers as well. And the reason why I mention all of this is, again, you are reducing or eliminating that administrative burden for your loved one, because it's not just you going through the diagnosis and the change, they're going through that as well. And most of them have their own family, their own children, their own jobs that they have to manage as they're dealing with the ailment of a loved one. So planning is caring. Lastly, you are not alone. Planning brings peace of mind. Support is always available. It's important to be open about your needs, discuss your care preferences early, and always, well, I shouldn't say always, because maybe you don't care for your family. But if you do, include them in your decisions. And that's just some contact information.
So Ashley and Tatiana have given us really great practical information about what to do when you're facing a life-changing diagnosis. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and give you a different perspective and talk about navigating the emotional landscape of receiving that diagnosis. This, I would imagine, among the people in the room, some people here may have received a diagnosis. Some people may have had a loved one who's faced a serious life challenge. Others may be preparing for the future. I think it's wonderful that everyone's here. Great that Michelle and the Village and Howard are making this space available for these conversations. I think none of us are here to sugarcoat things or to tell everyone to look on the bright side. We're here to, to offer some really practical guidance to support you as you potentially enter a really tough phase of life. So with all that in mind, Rosalind Carter, the former First Lady, said at one point that there are 4 types of people. There are people who have been caregivers, people who are caregivers, people who will be caregivers, and people who will need caregivers. So this is a topic that will, in all likelihood, touch all of us in some way at one point or another in our lives. Usually when I talk to groups, I have like really interactive conversations. So I feel like this is a lot of talking for just me. So just bear with me and we'll have some time for questions at the end. Okay, great. That slide's perfect. So I don't think it will come as a surprise to anyone in the room that there's a lot of loss inherent in aging, even without a diagnosis, just by virtue of the fact that we're getting older. We sometimes experience physical loss, our vision, our hearing, balance, mobility. People, as they retire and move to different stages of life, sometimes feel a loss of identity, loss of a role that they used to play, loss of a purpose that they once held. And so we're used to navigating all those things. We also lose people. We've all, I would imagine, lost parents, siblings, friends, loved ones. All of these losses are things that carry a lot of different emotions with them, and that are sad. And when we experience loss, there's a grieving process that naturally goes along with that. So when we think about this life-changing diagnosis, there's loss involved in that as well. There's a lot of change involved in a diagnosis. And so the picture of the iceberg, why are we looking at a picture of an iceberg? If the iceberg represents a change, there's, the part of the change that's visible, that's above water, but then there's a lot of parts that are down underneath the water. And we all know that icebergs extend way down. So if we're talking about a change, even a positive change in our lives, something like retirement, people look forward to retiring. What's above the water, the parts you can see, you're not going to work every day anymore. You're not bringing home a paycheck. You don't hold that same title maybe. But then down underneath the water, there's this maybe a loss of feeling of accomplishment that working brought you, loss of feeling like a part of a team, loss of the identity that was connected with that role. So in the same way, if we're talking about this diagnosis, what's above the water, the part that we can see, is maybe the name of the diagnosis, the Parkinson's or the cancer or the Alzheimer's, whatever that label is. And then also maybe how it will impact our physical body. That's kind of part of the change that we can see. But underneath that, there's all these other layers. There's the way this diagnosis is going to impact our relationships, our day-to-day life, our sense of identity, sense of who we are in the world, our sense of security, maybe, our view of the way we view ourselves. So we can go on to the next slide. When we get this diagnosis, there's a whole array of emotions that people often experience. I was just talking with a friend yesterday who was just diagnosed with breast cancer. And she told me that she just felt all of this rage and anger and, of course, fear and worry and sadness and confusion. And another thing she said that I thought was really interesting was she said, I feel really betrayed by my body. I've always been so active and I've always thought of myself as a healthy person. So just this shift, like I can't think of myself as a healthy person in the same way that I used to. So all of those feelings are natural, normal feelings to have. They all make sense. And we can feel multiple things at the same time. You know, I can get a diagnosis and feel grateful that it was caught as early as it was, maybe. And I can also be really worried and really fearful about what the future holds for me or what treatment might look like. The biggest challenge that people often run into when they're processing all these emotions is feeling like there's a right way and a wrong way to feel, or that there's emotions or feelings that are good and bad, or healthy and unhealthy. And in reality, all of our emotions are serving a purpose for us. And by ignoring any of them, ignoring them isn't going to make them go away. So really giving ourselves space to feel whatever it is that we're feeling is really important. You get the next slide. Now, we all have people in our lives who tell us to look on the bright side. And this comes from a place of love and concern. People who care about us want to fix things for us. They want us to feel better. They want to help us. So they tell us, focus on the positive, look on the bright side. And while focusing on the positive can be really helpful, I always tell people that when anyone tells you how to feel or how not to feel, that's like the least helpful thing they can do for you. We all go through life kind of operating at a certain level of just operating at a certain level. If I'm healthy and well rested and doing work that feels aligned with my purpose, and I'm in supportive relationships, those things make me all up here at my optimal level. I'm not worried about financial security. I'm at a good place in my life. My day-to-day life feels manageable. I'm way up here. When any of those things is out of whack, it knocks me down a little bit from that optimal place. So when we have someone who has received this really difficult diagnosis, that's going to bring up all these emotions that we talked about. It's going to be stressful at a minimum, and then whatever other emotions are involved. Then when we have someone telling us, look on the bright side, the underlying message there is what you're feeling isn't right. You're not feeling the way you should be feeling. And so then we feel like, okay, I'm not doing this right. I should be feeling differently. So that self-judgment that we're piling on top of ourselves, that knocks us down a little bit lower. And then we start feeling like, okay, I need to focus on the positive. I need to be optimistic. That takes a lot of energy to try to manipulate the way we're feeling. So that knocks us down even lower. And then at the same time, the person who's telling us that, maybe that's someone who we're really close to and who we would like to feel this deep connection with, but we're feeling out of sync with them because they just don't understand us. They don't get where we're coming from. So that knocks us down even lower. So it's just exhausting and depleting to be in that space. What we need instead is to feel heard and to feel accepted. So really what I'm sharing will benefit you whether you're ever in the position of having received the diagnosis, or if you're on the other end and have someone else in your life who you want to support. And so a lot of times people are really resistant to the idea of acceptance because they think acceptance means giving up or giving in. And we're really talking about two different things. When I can hear something. When we're talking about acceptance, we're talking about accepting that this is our new reality. I have this diagnosis. This is my reality now. And these are the feelings that I'm having. These are the emotions I'm experiencing. And we want to accept those feelings and accept this new reality as it is. It doesn't mean that I have to accept some foregone conclusion or accept that things are outside of my control or that I'm going to kind of give up. It's just accepting that this is what my world is right now. I have another close friend who is battling cancer, who has a very positive, optimistic outlook, and she still has moments where, she's sad that she's missing her grandkids' basketball games and band concerts. Like, she wants to be there, and she worries about her husband and the emotional toll that her care is taking on him. And that makes sense. She can feel very optimistic about her treatment and also feel disappointment and worry and have those moments of needing to process those feelings. Let's see. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So when we first get this diagnosis, we're in this really foggy place. We have a lot of questions. A lot of things just feel very uncertain to us. What does this diagnosis mean? How is it going to impact my day-to-day life? What does my prognosis look like? And we want is to feel like we've got some solid footing. So what can we do to get that grounding? Well, gathering information is going to help us feel more grounded. And what we want to do is have some type of vision of what our future is going to look like. Maybe then that means what the next month is going to look like. Maybe it means what the next week is going to look like. Maybe it's just the next hour. But we want to have something that's going to ground us in, this is where I am right now. Let's see. You can go on to the next slide. So in terms of getting that grounding, we want to think about what is within my control and what's outside of my control. There are some things that we absolutely can't control. We've gotten this diagnosis. We can't control the diagnosis we've gotten. We can't control the fact that we're getting older every day. We can't control the weather. There are some things that, as hard as we try, we're not going to be able to change. But there are a lot of things that we can control. We can influence, as Tatiana and Ashley have said, who is advocating for us, who is making medical decisions, who's going to be making those decisions for us if we're not able. We can control all those things. We can make decisions about how we're spending our time, where we're investing our time and energy, who we're bringing into our support circle, who we're including, and how much information we're sharing with them. We also can control the types of tools that we're using to support ourselves. For some people, journaling can be really helpful. For other people, meditation or prayer, leaning into a faith community. For other people, just gathering as much information as they can, reading and educating themselves, talking to people who maybe have had the same diagnosis or family members of people who have, support groups, different professionals. That's going to really vary from one person to another. I might be the type of person who wants to read as much as I possibly can and wants to kind of arm myself with as much information as possible. And I might tell Michelle, like, here's what you need to do. Like, this really helped me. You need to read this book. You need to check out this website. And Michelle might be the type of person who's like, you know what, for me, I am like, I'm overloaded with information right now. I'm going to trust the medical professionals to tell me what I need to know. And I'm going to invest my time and energy into getting as much rest as I can and taking care of my body. For each person, it's going to be really different, but figuring out what tools we want to use to support ourselves and how we want to influence that is the best way we can serve ourselves. And then also, that's fine, you can leave it there. Being really aware of what gives our lives meaning. and figuring out how we can carry that with us into this next chapter as we navigate our condition. And sometimes it's going to need to shift a little bit. For me right now, I love starting every day with a walk. I go outside, regardless of the weather. I'm always out for 45 minutes first thing in the morning. I love that time, that early time. I love the fresh air, the connection to nature. If I were in a situation where I wasn't able to take that morning walk for one reason or another, I would consider, okay, well, what are some ways that I can continue to enjoy that connection to nature? What are some ways I can continue to enjoy that quiet time, that space? What is it about this thing that's really important to me that I can take into this next chapter, even if it looks a little bit different than it does now? When we think about what brings meaning to our lives, our relationships are a huge part of that. Humans are kind of hardwired for connection. Our social interactions are kind of essential to our physical health, our emotional health, our mental health. And so when we think about what brings meaning to our lives, those relationships are going to be a big part of that. And a diagnosis changes our relationships. It may not change them drastically, but it's going to change them in some ways. It can put a lot of strain on relationships, and it can also deepen relationships. So when we think about that, whether we're on the side of having received the diagnosis or on the other side, the bridge, I like to use a bridge analogy where we can think about every conversation we have as an opportunity to build a bridge between ourselves and someone else. And when we are building bridges, we are like the bridge is built in like honesty and respect and dignity. And when we're building bridges, we're letting go of assumptions, we're asking thoughtful questions, we're really our goal is to form that deep connection, to really understand where the other person is, where they're coming from, and to acknowledge what they need, and to recognize that what they need may not be the same thing that we want to give or that we're used to giving. The conversations that involve difficult diagnoses can be tough. And so they're not going to be perfect conversations a lot of the time. Sometimes the best place to start is by saying, look, I have no idea what to say. I'm not sure what you need to hear, but I want you to know that I'm here for you and I love you. I care about you. I want to support you and I'm trying my best. But can you please let me know if I'm saying something to you that's not helpful? And then people, I'm sure some of you have been in a situation where people want to help you and they ask you, what do you need? Just tell me what you need. Tell me what you need. And a lot of times we don't know what we need. We just I really don't know. I don't think I need anything right now. But sometimes you don't know until someone offers it, until you get it, until you get to a later point. I think being clear on boundaries is really important in these scenarios. I was talking to a client recently who's recently retired. She's pretty young. Her husband is a bit older than her, and she's become his full-time caregiver. And she's exhausted, and it's sad. Her retirement looks nothing like what she had envisioned or what she had been looking forward to. And she has a group of friends who she's really close to, who she gets together with once a month. And she told me, it's really tough because one part of me wants to get together with them and just tell them, you guys, this is really hard because I know they'll sympathize with me. I know they'll be supportive. I know they'll encourage me. But another part of me wants to just go out with them and not think about the fact that I'm a caregiver now. I just want to go out with them and have like have fun with like we used to. I want to pretend that I'm like my old self for this evening. And the beauty of her relationship with her friends is she doesn't have to be the same from month to month, that she's close enough to them that she can tell them, this is what I need tonight, and they're there to support her in whichever she needs. But sometimes even when you do communicate those boundaries, people still have their own ideas about what the best way to help you is. I was on a call recently with one of the friends I mentioned earlier, and she was sharing her cancer diagnosis with several people on the Zoom for the first time. And we spent about 10 minutes having a really supportive conversation. And after 10 minutes, she said, okay, you know what? I've told so many people about this diagnosis. I'm just tired of talking about it. I'm ready to move on. I want to get back to our regular agenda now. Super clear. She said exactly what she wanted, exactly what she needed. And there were two people who were like, absolutely. But first, let me just tell you, people and everyone, when people have had experiences that they think could be helpful or have information they think could be helpful, it's so tempting to like want to share that. You just want to do something to make that person feel better. And so finding a way to maintain the connection while still being clear on your boundaries can be tricky, but by saying something like, you know what, I'm so grateful for all of the support that I have and all of the love, and it's awesome to know that there's so much information, within this community, and I'm at my max right now. I just don't have the bandwidth to take in anything more, but I love knowing that that's available. So I'll reach out to you if I want that information. I was with this other friend that I mentioned earlier last night when she was, telling this group of us about her diagnosis. A couple of people there, what they said, just instant response. You know what? You're going to beat this. Like, you've got this. I know someone who had this same diagnosis 25 years ago, and they're doing fine now. You got this. And that's great. It's encouraging. It's well-meaning. And it also isn't acknowledging the place that she said she was in, this place of fear and feeling betrayed. And so just being really more focused on listening than on sharing is the best advice that I feel like I can ever give people. You can go to the next slide. I kind of skipped over that one, like that, just about, we can either lean into people or lean away from them as we're navigating this. And then the last slide, a diagnosis changes the path of your life. It throws you a curveball, but it doesn't have to change the entire game. There will be uncomfortable emotions. The best things that we can all do to serve ourselves is to notice those emotions, to name them, and then to identify the parts of ourselves, the things that are important to us, the things that give our lives meaning, that we want to take with us into this next chapter. And then we want to find ways of staying connected as we navigate this new reality. So I appreciate the opportunity to share, and I think we're going to have some general Q&A next. So I'm looking forward to some conversation.